20 years ago, if someone had told me that 20 years from that point, I'd be standing in a kitchen somewhere, dehydrating petals and leaves, I would have been quite puzzled. And even though it would have been confusing, the idea of doing this later on in life wouldn't have been too far of a stretch, considering who I've always been. In this follow-up video, I'll show you more of the process I've used to turn fresh plants into dye powder and how I've used those powders to make natural dye for coloring textiles. Something I want to point out is that when I was dehydrating the hibiscus and making the powder, I realized that it was important to remove this part of the flower, and I'll put the name on the screen. The yellow parts on there tended to make the dye turn brown. So once the red petals were dehydrated, they were purple. And if that part wasn't removed, then when I blended them up to make the powder, the combination of the purple and yellow would make the dye brown, as opposed to what I was going for, which was more of the purple color. So that's something that I discovered during this process, is that it's very important to remove the middle part of the red hibiscus flower. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be doing here is making the naupaka dye by using the powder and boiling that in order to help dissolve it, and then putting it in a jar in the sun for solar dyeing. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the naupaka leaves that were air dried. Basically, I hung these up 2 or 3 months ago and just let them dry out naturally. And this is the color that resulted from that process. I'm going to go ahead and grind these up, and you can see the color here is similar to sand. And I was just curious to know how the dye would turn out. So I will be placing these in water, or using this in water and putting it out to solar dye a piece of fabric to see what happens. And these are old lychee leaves that I used to make dye a while back. I saved them and let them dry out as well. So I'll grind these up and also use the powder for solar dyeing. If you haven't already seen the video that I created about using lychee leaves as dye, I'll link that here in the video. Now here we are 2 days after I originally put all of the pieces out in dye, and I'm noticing that this hibiscus dye isn't coloring the fabric the way that it normally would. So I'll just keep an eye on things and see how the color is turning out. The naupaka isn't either, but naupaka typically, it tends to take a while to be effective. So I'm pretty used to that, but the hibiscus has me a little curious. So we tried again to make paint because I thought that having the powdered dye would be good for making paint. It may be better than using water in the color. And as you can see there, I was just showing the texture of the original of the binder that I made. It was too thick initially, and then I added more water. My daughter made her own, and hers turned out really good. It was a good texture from the beginning, and she didn't even cook hers the way that I did. It was just water and flour. So I'm just going to separate these and use Naupaka dye in one and hibiscus dye powder in the other. I'm mostly including this footage here because we did it. I do think that the color was good. Using the powder made for deeper color in terms of making paint. But we didn't have a lot of success when we tried to use the paint this time like we did in the other video where we used turmeric powder and spirulina. So it would just take a little bit more work at getting this more accurate and making it, if it's going to be used in artwork, making the color a little bit more significant. I will say that this dye powder is certainly better for making paint than the liquid dye, in my opinion. Well, it's been several days now, 4, maybe 5, since I've put the powdered dye in jars of water and put fabric in here to dye, and this color is not working the way that it normally would if I were using the plants fresh. I'm sorry, I'm not even recording the jars. So let's see. Let me look at the original pieces. Yeah, so this has been out here for a long time. And by now, when I normally use Naupaka dye, this would be far more, this would be more colored than it is right now. Now this is jersey knit material. This is jersey knit. Sometimes I find that the knit materials take a while longer to dye, but I don't think it should be taking this long. So I'm not sure what that says about using the powder to make dye as opposed to boiling the leaves and using that as dye. This is the hibiscus dye. This was made from dehydrating and grinding up hibiscus flowers. This is the original piece that's been out here for many, many days. Again, this is jersey knit as well. So no color, very light color there, I should say. And this is lychee leaf dye, and it's the same thing. I've uploaded a video before where I made lye from lychee leaves, just boiling the leaves and using the dye to solo dye fabric, and it was much darker than this by now when I put it in the sun. So it's taking a while for that. And these pieces are, so when I realized maybe it's the knit fabric that's the problem, I came out and put some woven cotton fabric in here, and it's been 1 or 2 days and this still isn't picking up much color. And same with the Naupaka. This is the knit, I'm sorry, this is the woven piece that I brought out here and put in. It's green, it's very, very light green, but I'm very curious to see if this will ever turn dark. You can see remnants of the powder on there. Today's pretty sunny. That hasn't been the case every single day that this has been out here, but I've had situations where with Naupaka it will be overcast for a week and really no sun, and the fabric will be so dark by now. And then I have one more dye back here. This is also Naupaka, but this is the Naupaka dye that was made from leaves that dried on their own. I didn't dehydrate these in the oven. These just hung up and dried on their own for probably 2 months. They were out there, and the color was more close to a brown or yellow. So this is the dye that the powder made when what was I gonna say? This is the dye that was made from the powder, which was made from the dried leaves. So very, very light colored there as well. I'm not sure what this means in terms of using the dye powder to dye fabric. These are all still very light. It's been many days, and it's just not giving the result that I expected. It's pretty windy out here. So what I'm just going to leave these out here, and I'll probably just upload another video or a short video to see what they do after more time. I'm going to stir this up a bit because the powder does tend to settle. I did boil it, but there's still some that kind of settles on the bottom. Most of it is dissolved though, so we'll see. But the colors are really pretty though. This green is very nice. So is this brown, and then this purple. This actually had a loom powder added to it. Oh, not this. I almost forgot about this one. This is the original hibiscus dye. So I did the first flowers that I dehydrated. I put them in the grounder and made powder, and this is that dye. It was originally more of a brownish color, and I think that was due to the yellow parts of the flower mixing with the purple. And as you can see, it's been several days, and this is closer to brown. So this is hibiscus dye. Very interesting here. This is a good brown color. And it's probably not what you would expect from red hibiscus flowers, but this is how it ended up. So I'm going to leave all of these out here for a little bit more time, give it a few more days, and then see what happens. And I'll upload the results after that time. Even though the dye colors are not producing in the way that I had expected them to so far, I'm glad that I've done this experimentation and learned how to go about drying fresh plants to make dye powders. There are many benefits to this, with one of the main ones just being the convenience of being able to use dye in powdered form instead of fresh plants. So I'm so glad that I did this and learned about this, and also that I was able to share it with you. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.